Let's meet Professor Hallstein. He was professor of law in Rostock and later in Frankfurt. Here's an excerpt from a speech he gave on January 23, 1939 on the topic of common European law under German leadership. Quote, "One of the most important laws in occupied European countries is the protection law for German blood and honor." Where do we find Mr. Hallstein after the war? Well, here you see Mr. Hallstein on the right side sitting beside German Chancellor Adenauer. Doing what? Signing the first EU treaty in Rome in 1957. The goal of the IG Farben successors was the same that it was for IG Farben. The conquest of Europe to create a common European market from Lisbon to Sofia. The first phase was the consolidation of Western Europe. This is how they started. And then the second phase was the acquisition of Central and Eastern European states. How did it come that the EU headquarters came to Brussels? Well, here's a letter written by Mr. Hallstein to Konrad Adenauer on December 30th, 1957. Outlining in detail the bazaar to get control over this new body. You can see that also on the internet. You can read that they say the only way we can control this is if the Germans take the presidency. And the best man suited for this job is Mr. Hallstein himself. He has no trouble to say that. What do we do with the other countries? I'm quoting, "The Italians have to be bribed. They have to be paid money so that we take control of this new European Union bureaucracy." And he says, we have, I'm reading it in German, "An Brüssel als Endlösung der Sitzfrage der EU muss festgehalten werden." He says, we need to stick to Brussels as the seat of the European Union. And the way he phrases it, Endlösung, does that ring a bell? The final solution, the Endlösung for the Jewish question. But these are all little episodes, you may say, considering to what's coming now. This is something you need to understand as a European, as a citizen, approving to the current plans for a European Union. This is how Mr. Hallstein, Mr. Globke, and the IG Farben successors designed their Europe. Remember, Mr. Hallstein was the first president of the European Commission for 10 years, from 1957 to 1967. So he was the man who created the basic structure of how the people of Europe should live together for the next generations. If the IG Farben cartel and these interest groups get their way. And here's how they designed it. The EU Commission is the political executive of this Europe. But no one controls it. No one can vote for it. The people in this commission are being appointed. No one knows by whom. No one knows by which mechanism. Well, we know. The European Commission makes the laws for Europe, for you, for the people of Prague. They make the regulations, not only for this generation, but for all future generations. And because it is obvious that you cannot let that stand alone, this would be called a dictatorship, we are being fooled by so-called European elections. 400 million European people, those who can vote, are called to elect the European Parliament. But this Parliament has no power. Not like in your democracy or in ours or wherever, where there's a parliament who says yes or no. In Europe, in the European Union, that's not the case. That's not the case. They can talk. They can consult. But the decisions are being taken by the Commission. Now, how do we call this? We have to wake up to the fact that what they present to us as the European Union, the big unity of European countries, is a fraud. It's not a democracy. The basis of any democracy is the power of the people. If our elected representatives have little or no power, democracy becomes a farce. And so we see that the same figures that created these undemocratic structures, Mr. Hallstein and Mr. Vinegar, the new CEO of IG Farben daughter Höchst, they are meeting on the 15th and 16th of July 1969 in Brussels under the title proclaiming the United States of Europe. It's just propaganda. Who doesn't want unity? But we have to be very careful what kind of unity they are talking about. And so here is the unholy tradition from the CEO of BASF, Mr. Wurster, to a young employee of BASF by the name of Helmut Kohl, who was financed from the position of a simple employee of BASF into the chancellery, and for 16 long years became the puppet master of the interests of the IG Farben successors. Under Kohl's chancellery, he appointed Mr. Schäuble into the position of Mr. Globke, the eminent Greece, the person who has everything in his hands. Mr. Schäuble today is the Minister of Interior Affairs, the man who wants to turn the European Union into a police state, with computer being open to spying without you knowing, without any court orders, with telephones, emails, bank accounts, even your doctor's records being supervised without you knowing.